Hi, this is Jody Ryder, and we're starting a series on how to design Business Central in order to correctly implement it. And we are going to start the series talking about the chart of accounts. And so you'll notice I'm in the Kronos company. Getting a Kronos company is fairly simple. It's a sample company. Microsoft doesn't charge for it, so you can actually get into Kronos and practice. But when you're implementing BC, the first place to start is the chart of accounts and chart of accounts design. And I would like to preface this by saying there are cases of not changing the chart of accounts when moving a company from one system to another, such as GP to BC or QuickBooks to BC. Everybody probably already has a chart of accounts, but there is also a strong case for changing the chart of accounts. Again, it's not always possible. Your client or your own company could have another source operational system that has to talk to your accounting system, and all of the chart of accounts is replicated in both systems. That's understandable. This is for a situation where you can control the integrations and you can control what hits what. And so we're going to talk about the need to redesign the chart of accounts. And that's because BC adds a ton of functionality and reporting based on how you design your chart of accounts. So we're going to just start with the basics today. The chart of accounts is going to take up 2 of these session series, and they're not going to be long videos for each one. And we are just going into the chart of accounts in the Kronos company. And the first thing I want you to notice is that visually it's giving you reporting. So here are my assets, here are my total assets. You're like, well, how is it totaling up? We're going to talk about that. It's bolded. How is it bolded? It's a hair indented. These are all design options. And remember that you can, this chart of accounts is your first financial statement. So when you're in the chart of accounts, you can filter it to a certain date, certain balances, and have your first reporting. There's a lot of filters and reporting in the chart of accounts. So I just want you guys to understand that's the first reason to redesign. I have found that a 5 or 6 digit chart of accounts works. And I also want to preface this by saying, if you're not familiar with BC, the reason it doesn't matter too much if you're redesigning the chart of accounts is that in transactions, the search feature on every line of every transaction allows you to search by name as opposed to by number. And it allows it quite easily. And so even though your clients or yourselves probably have your chart of accounts memorized, changing it isn't bad at all because you're able to filter and search quite easily in every transaction. Okay. So there's a lot of fields here in our list. BC is full of lists. They're all over the place. And what we're going to do is dive into an account to look at account setup, and then we're going to talk more about the design. Today's session is mainly focused on setting up an account and what your options are. So I am going to pop into the first account here. That's a regular posting account. I know it's a posting account because the account type here says posting. So again, the number is fairly easy to come up with, right? And you can use configuration packages or integrations to create these. As part of this series, we're going to talk about using the config packages to upload many of these changes. It's a number, it's a name. That's the same in almost every accounting system. But then you have categories. Many people have decided not to use subcategories, etc. I get that. But again, BC offers an insane amount of easy reporting based on your chart of accounts, and the subcategories play a large part in that. So your income and balance, it's either an income statement or a balance sheet account. Just like many other accounting systems, that's because at the end of the year, when you run a year-end closing, income statement accounts get closed out and rolled up to retained earnings. Balance sheet accounts maintain their balances year over year. Your account category is controlled by BC, so the main account category is either assets, liabilities, equity, income, cost of goods sold, and expense. So a lot of BC goes straight into Accounting 101. So we know these are the main categories of pretty much any accounting functionality in the United States and elsewhere. Assets, liabilities, equity, income, cost of goods sold, and expense. This is also going to help drive automatic reporting later. The account subcategories you control. And this is where we're going to spend a good chunk of our time today, so I'm going to breeze right past this for right now. But the account subcategories come into a lot of reporting play, and they can be customized. Debit or credit, I always choose both, but you can choose either debit or credit. And just like anywhere else in BC, if you hover over the field, it's going to tell you what that field is, okay? Account type is either going to be posting a heading, a total, a begin total, or an end total, okay? This is so that you can create mainly lines in a chart of accounts that are, you know, this is my cash subcategory, right? And this is begin total on the cash subcategory. This is end total on the cash subcategory. So I can get a total cash. If I have more than one AR account, what's the total of my AR accounts? That's how you control that. Headings are headings. This is my balance sheets. This is my income statement. This is my equity. This is my liabilities. They are headings because, again, your chart of accounts isn't just a chart of accounts. It's your first financial report. So we're going to talk about the use of these and how they work as well as part of later aspects of this series. Totaling. If I chose this was a total, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go to a line that's totaling, total assets here. You can see this is the end total, and it's totaling the account numbers 10001 through 10990. And you cannot post to your totals, your begin totals, your headings, etc. And that's perfectly okay because they're there designed to give you quick totals. As a matter of fact, when you're in your chart of accounts, you can actually search for total and see each of the total lines. And we can also pull in balance at date, which we're going to talk about later, which will totally give your balance at any given date. All right. Balance is 7,000. You'll notice that this lights up, which means I can drill down into it and actually see what makes up that balance. Reconciliation account, accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory. If you mark this as a reconciliation account, you also should mark it no direct posting so that if it's inventory, for instance, only aspects hitting your items can post to it. If you mark it as a reconciliation account for AP, same thing, only purchasing should be hitting it. You can also block accounts from being used at all. So direct posting, you can turn it off and you can't do a regular general entry to this. Blocked, it can't be used at all if you turn that on. Last date modified, I'm going to hit show more and see what else we got. Name is going to populate search name. You can also change your search name if you need to. Okay. Omit default description in journal. This is because when you're doing transactions in BC and you enter your account number, the description is going to default to the account number. So if you're not familiar with all of that, when you're doing any transaction in BC, you can be using a bank account as the account type. You could use an item as the account type, a GL account as the account type. And so if you choose GL account as the account type and a number, the description defaults. If you don't want that, you want to force people to enter a description on the transactions, which I highly recommend, you can turn off omit default description in the journal. And you can also set review policies. Posting. Now here's where the chart of accounts can get insanely complex, because just like other accounting systems where you have multiple segments in a chart of accounts, BC allows you to segment it out by choosing, what dimensions this particular account goes to. But BC doesn't work like other accounting systems. Let's take GP, for instance. You have 3 segments in the chart of accounts: state, department, and your natural account, right? In transactions in BC, you're going to choose those separately. So your chart of accounts is really just a main natural account number. And then your dimensions can be pulled into every transaction in any configuration you need to put them in. So instead of creating 20,000 accounts in your chart of accounts, you can create just 1,000 accounts in your chart of accounts. And then each transaction can be tagged with the dimensions for the reporting you're looking for. You can, of course, assign each account its own dimensions so that you have more of a real segmented chart of accounts. I do not recommend it. Same with posting. General posting type, you do not need to pull this into your chart of accounts unless you want to limit it to purchase, limit it to settlements, etc. You also don't need to assign a general posting group because essentially, unless you're assigning this account to a specific vendor or customer, you don't need any of these posting types. Now, VAT posting types, this series really shouldn't be used for European accounting because I'm not concentrating on that here. Tax group code can be, you can pull it in or you cannot pull it in. It's really up to you. If you're not charging taxes, the GL account doesn't need non-taxable. Your customers don't need your customers and vendors don't need any tax group information if you're not taxing. If you are taxing, then your chart of accounts might not be the place to control the taxes. Customers, vendors, their locations, that's where to control taxes. But you can put whether this account is taxable or not taxable on here. Consolidation. You can consolidate your chart of accounts quite easily with a consolidation method, and it's kind of between, you just choose another account as the debit or credit account here. In reporting, you can also adjust based on currencies and exchange rates in reporting, and you can also do some pretty complex cost accounting. Most implementations don't require this information at all. Notes can be made on a chart of accounts. What else can we do? Add a new account, share this particular account, delete. Like most accounting systems, you really should not delete an account once it's been used. I have seen the ability to delete because of the way BC security is. I would make sure that I set my security so you can't delete an account that exists. Good news is if you do and it has been used before, you can just recreate the account with the same number and all of its transactions fall back into place. In other words, even if you delete the account, you're not going to delete the historical records for the account. So what else can we do in a chart of accounts? We can set up templates for accounts. So if you're creating new account after new account, you can actually set some of these defaults as a template. Other things, you can set specific dimensions, you can put comments, you can specify where this account can and can't be used. You can see its general ledger entries and add some extended text and some receivables and payables information here, which I can view by day, week, or month. Okay. Balance. I can see the account balance. I can see the account balance by dimension. By the way, there are better places to get to this information, but it is here on the card. And some related general posting setups, tax posting setups, GL registers, and some basic reports here. Again, there's better places to get this information and easier ways to run these reports than drilling down into the account itself. And that's a little bit about a general posting setup. Now, before I get into totals and formatting your chart of accounts, I want to talk about the account subcategory. Because as part of your reporting, if I go into finance, you're actually going to see some GL budgets, some other reporting in here. And most of it's based on your setup of the chart of accounts. So we're going to talk a little bit about the subcategories and how those are set now. So I can drill into subcategories here and control the GL account categories. But before you import your chart of accounts and design, your very, very first step in designing your chart of accounts is designing your account subcategories, because as any system, the subcategory has to exist before you can assign anything to that subcategory. So we're going to use our lookup and go to GL categories. And here they are all set up. And you'll see the setup for your subcategories isn't as simple as all that, because what do you see here? Looky here, another financial report that I can use. Here's my balance in each of my subcategories. What's my total cash? It's right there. It's my total AR? It's right there. Prepaid expense, inventory, current liabilities, etc. So as you can see, designing your subcategories is very important, especially if you want to ask the question, what do you need to see totaled? How do you want to separate it in reporting? Most beginning systems or transition systems, if I'm bringing somebody from GP to BC, they already have categories that you can mimic. But it's a question to ask. Do you want to change up your categories, etc.? So you can generate financial reports from these subcategories. You can look at your general ledger and again your financial reporting. If I edit the list, you will see here that I can add account categories. I can move them and arrange them. So let's go ahead and do a new one. And I'm going to say new under accounts receivable and give it a name, current assets, right? So maybe that's a heading, maybe it's not. I can indent this now. So it's just another indented aspect of my accounts receivable. I can outdent it to make it equal to my other current assets here. And see, this is all under current assets anyway. I can move it up in the list. I can move it down in the list. I can change the name of a subcategory. And each of these can be brought in. If you're going to make a ton of changes, which I generally recommend, you're going to want to use a config package to bring these in. Your account category can't be changed. It's going to be assets, liabilities, equity, income, cost of goods sold, or expense. Once you assign a GL account to the category, these GL accounts in category will automatically populate. So if you're bringing in a config package, you don't have to worry about the assignment of your GL accounts because you're putting the cart before the horse. The GL account categories have to exist before the GL accounts can exist. And then you can also add an additional report definition. These are my cash accounts. These are for operating activities, investing activities. And these additional report definitions are also out of the box existing. The balance will populate on its own once you've moved in historical account transactions or you've started to transact. So You want to design how your first reports want to look with the account subcategories. Each one should be assigned an existing account category. The GL accounts in the category will populate, but your additional report definition would be handy in other reporting like cash flow reports, etc. Okay, and by the way, you cannot drill into these amounts over here. But essentially, I want you to think about your GL account categories. And then in our next series, we are going to talk about changing a chart of accounts and how to keep track of what's mapped to what. And that is the first introduction to your chart of accounts in BC to get a really good design on Business Central for financial reporting. Next series, we're going to dive into how to design the totals and the subtotals. And then we're going to get into how to use configuration packages to import the account subcategories and then import your chart of accounts correctly so that everything's totaled up and looking good so you can start bringing in your account transactions. That's the first in our series. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.